Hey, everybody, and welcome to Plant Prescription, a podcast by Costa Farms, where my cohort Justin and I talk about plants, answer some of your questions, and hopefully shed some light on some topics and bust some plant myths. Um, when we open this up, I would like to start, if I could, before we get into any of these questions, with a fun fact about a bug. You ready,
Do tell
Justin?
Michelle.
Okay. So lately, I've noticed there's been a lot of negative feelings towards spiders. And I want to kind of give you guys some fun little facts about spiders to maybe change your mind into appreciating these guys just a little bit more. Particularly, my heart is with the jumping spiders. I know that other spiders can be kind of scary, and I get that. Some of them make my skin crawl a little bit as well. But jumping spiders are adorable. And I will argue you to the day I die about that fact. And one of the really cool things about jumping spiders is, do you know how they jump, Justin? Do you know how they get that push to jump?
I would guess with their little legs.
Yeah, well, their little legs. they're they're jumping with their little legs. But I mean, they jump a really far distance. And essentially what they're doing is creating like a little mini hydraulic system in their bodies to get that like pressure buildup to do that big jump. And instead of like hydraulic fluid, which I guess would be what's in things, I'm not a mechanic, but instead of that kind of stuff, what they use, the liquid and what they use for their little hydraulic system is their blood. They basically,
Ew.
yeah, well, this is supposed to make you like spiders more. It's so cool. Could you imagine as a human if we were able to pump our blood into certain areas of our body? If we were able to pump our blood to like jump really far, wouldn't that be super cool?
It would. It would. I don't know, Michelle. I feel like I can speak for a good number of our listeners who would be completely wigged out, like I am, of the idea that these spiders have extra ability to jump at you.
Yeah, well, they
You
can't
know,
fly. So there's that.
no, no. But, if they're jumping away from me, I am much more comfortable with them. But knowing that they're using their blood to do these super jumps in my direction still wigs me out.
It is kind of funny that you mentioned that because 9 times out of 10, if you put your finger out, they will actually jump on you, which is really funny.
No, thank you.
They do like a little parkour. They jump on and jump off parkour. Anyway, we'll work on the spider thing. There's some more fun and more amicable facts about spiders. So we'll work on it.
All right, if you like houseplants more than you like spiders, the rest of this episode is for you.
Oh,
Should we
okay.
jump into the questions?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm not getting any
All
traction on
right.
spiders. Let's go.
All right, first one comes from Eileen in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She says, are plastic pots better than clay pots for my houseplants?
Well, I'll go first on this one. I think it depends on the plant. It's never a simple answer for anything, really, honestly. But in this scenario, I would say in some situations, plastic would be better for those plants that don't like to dry out. I'm thinking ferns, calatheas, things like that probably would be better in a plastic pot. But other plants that may appreciate a dry down, like specifically, I'm thinking succulents, cacti, probably would be happier in a terracotta pot. Um, it really just, to me, depends on the water needs of that plant.
And why is that, Michelle? For those folks who are like, what's the difference in watering with a plastic versus a clay pot?
Well, hopefully both of these have holes on the bottom. And so the only difference would be the substrate that the pot is made out of. And with a plastic, you're not going to get any air exchange through the plastic pot to the soil. Versus with a terracotta, it's a little bit more porous, and you're going to get some kind of like an air exchange, for lack of a better way of describing it. Basically, that pot's going to dry down faster with the terracotta pot versus a plastic pot is really going to be holding that moisture and not letting a whole lot of air in and out. So with a plastic pot, your water loving plants or your plants that just hate to be dried down are going to really like that plastic pot. And the plants that like to experience some dry down would probably prefer a terracotta pot where it's going to dry down faster.
From a plant standpoint, Michelle is 100% correct, of course. But Eileen, I also think you need to factor in the your consideration too.
Mhm.
In general, the plastic pots are going to be lighter weight, and so if you have your plants like on shelves, plastic may be a better choice. And plastic is typically less breakable, and so again, if it's a shelf situation, if you have pets or other scenarios where you think there's a good chance the pot may fall off or be impacted in some way, then plastic may be better than clay because it's going to withstand that better.
Another thing too is going off of your preferences when you're watering plants. If you tend to water a lot, maybe a terracotta would be just overall better for you. Or if you're very busy and you forget to water, you don't have time to water, whatever the case is, or if you have a lot of plants and you don't get time to water all of them, plastic may be better. There's a whole lot of factors that go into it. Neither one nor the other I would consider better.
No, and then if you want to muddy the waters even more, you can do like a glazed ceramic, which gives you or it prevents the evaporation through the pores that the terracotta will give you, but it
Mhm.
gives you that weight and substance that terracotta gives you. So that's a nice in-between option.
You could also do fabric pots. And fabric pots, to muddy the waters even more, are lightweight like a plastic pot is, but they have that really good air exchange like a terracotta would.
Fabric pots are going to dry out super fast in the typical home, aren't they?
I would say so. I like them because I generally get larger plants and I have a large amount of soil in them. And so they don't really, you'd be surprised, they don't really get super dry. Because a lot of times what I've seen is I've seen a lot of people put the fabric pots inside of the cache pot, right?
Yeah.
So you have some sort of like airflow, but it's kind of minimal because there's not a lot of breeze on the pot. And
It's
in my
not like you just have the fabric pot sitting out on a saucer.
right, like me, I have that scenario, but the amount of soil in the fabric pot is a really great buffer because of the volume of soil in those giant pots. Really complicated things there. There's a lot of options for pots. Really just depends on your preference and your watering schedule. And if you have any crazy cats that tend to knock things off of shelves, blah, 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 blah.
So ultimately, Eileen, no right answer, whatever you like best.
Yep, I agree.
All right, this next question, I'm guessing, is not going to be so much of a your personal preference. This one comes from Sam in Forest City, Arkansas. How do I know if my plant has thrips or fungus gnats on it?
Hmm.
Michelle, take this one away.
Well, you're going to find both on yellow sticky cards. So if you have like yellow sticky cards, yellow sticky tape, yellow or blue, I mean, you could do that too, I guess, but commonly is yellow. You're going to find them both on there. And differentiating them on a sticky card is pretty funny. I wish that there was a way I could put like graphics into this. It's pretty morbid. The fungus gnats typically on the sticky cards are going to be like they've been through an event on a sticky card and you're going to see their legs and their wings kind of like everywhere. Um, and a thrips, first of all, I want to put it out there. Technically, because I'm being a curmudgeon here, um, thrips is always thrips. Singular, plural, whatever you're saying, you could say, oh, there's a thrips, not a thrip. And I mean, I'm just as guilty, and I know that that's the way that it's supposed to be said. It's always supposed to be with an S, but I also say thrip. But if you guys want to just be fancy one day and tell somebody about it and like flex your knowledge, technically it's always thrips. So if you see a thrips on a card, it's going to be a lot more tame than it would be a fungus gnat because they don't have those giant wings. Thrips typically are like little tiny sausage bugs. For lack of a better way to describe them. Is that how you would describe them? That's how I describe them to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense. I've never thought of that as an analogy, but it's a good analogy.
Yeah. And I mean, tiny, tiny little sausage bugs. They don't have very obvious wings, although technically the family order, whatever group they're in, I forget the exact name of that phylogenic class or whatever, but they are in this order, we'll say Thysanoptera, and Thysanoptera is means fringed wings. So thrips have wings. They're not great wings, but as the name implies, they're fringed and they're frilly. So they do have wings, but they're not out like the fungus gnat adult wings will be. And so on a sticky card, you may see a little tiny fringed wing coming up, but it's not going to be as exaggerated as a fungus gnat. And a fungus gnat has really, really long legs, kind of looks like a mosquito, versus a thrips, again, tiny little sausage bug. So if you suspect your plants have either of these, just put out sticky cards, because that would be a really good way to catch them. Maybe not all of them, because not all thrips are created equal, which is very challenging and very much a bummer when it comes to biological control. So there are many, many different kinds of thrips. If you have house plants that you're looking for thrips on, it may be more like echinothrips, maybe even onion thrips, maybe depending on the plant. But the way you find these thrips on the plants is to look under the leaves. And I have even seen some of the echinothrips on the tops of leaves as well. Same thing with onion thrips. So just look at the leaves. They're going to be really small, but if you kind of stare at the leaf long enough, you'll be able to see movement, because these guys really don't sit still very long. So just kind of look at the leaf. If you see something that looks like a little tiny string or little tiny sausage bug, it may be a thrips. And then if you see little tiny string or sausage bug looking things on your cards, it's probably thrips. Fungus gnats are going to look a lot like mosquitoes. So if you see something that looks like a mosquito on your plants, it could be a fungus gnat. Now, fungus gnats also have larvae and they live in the soil. So if you want to look for fungus gnats in the soil, which is really where they're going to be causing a lot of the problems, is when they're in the soil. In the air, they're just a nuisance. They're very annoying. But in the soil, their larval form, that's what's going to really damage your plant. So they're not going to be too deep in the soil. You should be able to just kind of, with your finger, kind of brush aside the top layer of the soil. I've found that they tend to be most times closer to the stem of the plant, although I have seen them everywhere in the pot. But I would start searching near the stem of your plant because that's where you don't want them, is in that area. So search around there. If you see like little white maggoty looking things, that could be a fungus gnat larva. So I really went around about and a lot in that answering that question. Look at your sticky cards. If you suspect you have either of those, put out sticky cards and then look at those cards. If it looks like you're catching mosquitoes, it's probably fungus gnat adults. And then if you see a lot of those, definitely look in the soil to see if you have like little white maggots in your soil. And if you see like little tiny string looking things, like little pin, like little, again, like little tiny, tiny, tiny sausage bugs, those could be thrips. And if you see those, look on and under your plant leaves to see if you see them there.
What about damage? Thrips will damage the foliage, whereas fungus gnats will not. So, is that a
Absolutely.
good indicator that you can use if you don't have sticky cards?
Yes, absolutely. Good point. So thrips, again, like Justin mentioned, will damage the leaves. They have rasping, scraping mouth parts. And so you're going to have this kind of silvery, scraped look on your leaves. And now some species on foliage plants will cause kind of like this bronzing, browning patch on the leaves as well. So if you see any kind of bronzing, browning patches, they also poop on the leaves. I couldn't go an episode without saying the P word. I really don't plan on saying. I don't. This is not. I'm not thinking like, how could I get this word in here? I'm not. It just. It's important because it's one of the things that you look for. And with thrips, they do leave behind like little black oily looking slicks on plants, and that's their business coming out the back end. And so if you have a really bad thrips infestation, you're probably going to see those markings as well.
All right. Earlier too, you were talking about thrips as having really kind of lacy, fine wings. Does that
Mm-hmm.
mean they're not nearly as good flyers as fungus gnats?
I wouldn't consider either of them like Olympic flyers.
Well, I know like when I have had experience with fungus gnats, they seem to love my face.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah.
Would thrips give you the same experience? Or
Mm,
like
no,
like
you're
is
gonna
that
find
something you could kind of be as a differentiator too?
yeah, you have a good point. Thrips aren't going to be like hovering around you. They kind of go on a one track path, right? Whereas fungus gnats tend to kind of float around. And yeah, they're very pesky as adults. I've snorted a lot of fungus gnats in my day because they get right up in your face. So that's a good indication. I have noticed thrips will tend to kind of like, it's more of like a jumping thing. They don't really fly very far. You see them jumping more and going shorter distances, relatively speaking, but they do tend to end up on your arms a lot. And so you're gonna probably feel that. You're probably gonna feel something super tiny walking around on your arm. And if you look down and it's like a little tiny, little tiny string bug, it could be thrips. And yeah, fungus gnats are just gonna get all up in your face. And I don't know what's wrong with them. I don't know why they do that. Drives me crazy.
Me
Oh my
too.
gosh. It drives me nuts. It's just, why?
You
Can't
know,
make sense for them. It's a giant thing that they're flying in their face. Like, how stupid can you be? Why would you do that? It's not like they're feeding on
yeah.
you. They're not feeding on you. By the way, fungus gnats don't bite humans. If you have something that looks like a mosquito is biting you, it's probably a mosquito. But, sorry, what were you going to say?
I forgot. I love the quote about the mosquito.
Oh, yeah. If something's biting you, kill it. Just sorry. Okay. Well,
Um,
it wasn't too confusing. Yeah, a lot of unnecessary information in there. Sorry.
all right, our third question of the day comes from Logan, Utah. Amanda wants to know, is it true you can grow coffee as a houseplant and will it produce beans?
Yes. Don't we have a coffee house plant? Isn't it like, what is it called? Isn't it just coffee? What is it?
Yep,
I actually
yep.
don't know the answer to this one. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say you probably can't grow beans, but Justin, what do you think? What's your input on this?
Yeah, you can absolutely grow coffee as a houseplant. It makes a pretty nice shrub actually. It has glossy dark green leaves, rather stately as a houseplant. It can, if you have really good conditions, flower and if pollinated, produce fruits. Now, if you have a large coffee plant in your house, I would not expect it ever to produce enough beans that you can ever like make your own cup of coffee from it. But yes, you certainly can grow it. It likes lots and lots of light. It likes really warm temperatures. It likes above average humidity. Think like Costa Rica conditions. That's the kind of what it wants. I actually had a coffee that I got from Costa, a
Mhm.
little plant. I think it was like in a 4-inch pot.
Mhm.
I threw it in a 10-inch pot in my backyard in Miami, and it got about shoulder high.
Wow.
It did flower, and I think I want to say it produced about a dozen beans.
Wow. I mean,
So
a
yeah,
dozen
it is.
beans is significant. You could do chocolate covered coffee beans.
Yeah, so it is certainly possible to grow it, but really recommend it as an ornamental and not as a way to grow some of your own delicious beverage.
I have a lot of questions about the coffee beans though, because now that I know that you've had and successfully grown beans, first of all, how long did it take for those to ripen?
I didn't really pay attention. It was so as you know, Michelle, passiflora is my thing. And so the
Yeah.
other plants in my backyard were just sort of like other plants that I had because they were there and they were fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the coffee plant was blooming, and then I remember at some point it was like, oh, look, it actually made fruits. But I
Did
can't
it
say
smell
I
like coffee? Second question, did it smell? Was it aromatic?
no.
Oh, well, that's very disappointing. I would guess that it would be.
No,
So
you have to grind the beans to get the aroma out.
were the beans in a pod? So many questions.
So yeah, Amanda, if you want to grow coffee as a beautiful indoor or even outdoor patio plant, in the shade, absolutely go for it.
I know I've seen those plants, so I've never grown one, but apparently Justin has. All right, is that it for questions for today?
That is three questions.
Okay.
And we get to handle our misconception.
All right. Bust a myth.
All right, this is an old one that I have seen like my entire career.
Okay.
Fertilizer is the best way to help a struggling plant.
I've been
And
going first on a lot of these, so I'm going to let you handle this one first. I feel like we have very similar opinions on this. I want to
you
hear
know,
you.
I understand the instinct behind this.
Yes.
Why giving a plant nutrients seems like it would help it.
Yep.
However, there are several scenarios where that could actually do more harm than good.
Yes.
If your roots are suffering, either from root rot or the plant is extremely dry, fertilizing it can burn those roots, causing even more damage.
Mm-hmm.
If your plant is struggling because you have over-fertilized it already, then adding more fertilizer is just going to make it worse. Fertilizer is not one of those things where if some is good, more is better.
So I will also say fertilizer is not only food for plants, but food for other things as well. So it could also be food for pathogens, and it could also be very much food for pests, particularly noting aphids, which isn't as common in houseplants inside, but in the fall, when people take their houseplants in, that's when aphids tend to pop up on them. Then aphids will explode, like not physically, their populations will explode with higher nitrogen in your plants. And there was a couple of studies done on this. It's still something that I think we're all learning about in the nitty gritty detailed fashion, but overall, just say overall, higher nitrogen, higher fertilizer can actually help your pests grow faster. And then same thing with pathogens. Some pathogens will go crazy for nitrogen. It seems to be the killer is always nitrogen. Um, which is the NPK. It's the first component in
Yeah.
fertilizer.
And in houseplants, it's one of the more important ones. Well, I guess of the three, it's
Of
the
the three
driving
macros,
factor.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So, and then
Um,
like Justin said, if you have burnt roots, adding of salt essentially can really kind of tip that over the edge.
all right. Now you said something that some people might cringe about. So I just want to I just want
I'm
to cover
sorry.
myself.
I've been doing it a lot today. I just started off with the cringeworthy thing, which was spiders. That's just my MO. What was it? What did I say?
So there is a big debate with a lot of people on, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people. I've seen a number of people debating, um, and taking issue with people calling fertilizer food.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes. I mean,
And so yes, we acknowledge fertilizer is not really food. We're using that more in the metaphorical sense.
yes. Please don't, please, no more. Like, don't make this like the next Tide Pod challenge. This is not, fertilizer is not food. It is plant food.
Well,
Psst.
no, I mean for plants it's not food is the argument.
What do you mean?
Right? Food is calories and
Oh,
energy. right? So,
Okay.
photosynthesis is the food process. Um, Fertilizer is the nutrients, the nutrition.
Can't say anything more.
And
It's just like,
so anyway, to
wow.
those of you out there who are sensitive to that, we acknowledge that.
I apologize for that. I have just not thought about it like that for a while, so I do apologize. Justin is right.
And what a lovely note to end our podcast on.
I know I hate ending it on Justin is right, but Justin is right, and it is not. I'm very casual about the way I call things. I mean, sugar poo, honeydew, which is a very simple word. Plant food, it's not. It's plant nutrients. So, and you are right, it is nutrients. It's just nutrients. It's nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, et cetera, et cetera. It's nutrients, not calories. So, you are right. Now I've learned something today. I never really thought of it like that, but hmm. Hmm.
So there you go.
Okay.
If you have questions that you would like to see us talk about here on Plant Prescription, drop us an email, help at questions at costafarms.com, or drop us a note on any of our social media channels. We love talking about plants, and Michelle loves talking about bugs. So send them in, and we'll talk to you on the next round. Happy gardening,
Bye-bye.
everybody.